Welcome to Bankruptcy, Through the Looking Glass, with Barry Levine.
Hello and welcome to Bankruptcy Through the Looking Glass with experienced attorney Barry Levine. My name is Kevin Rosenquist. I am your host, and thank you for being here today. We are going to discuss the dangers of debt settlement and debt consolidation. Barry, thanks for being here.
Hey, how's it going? It's a beautiful day here in New England.
It's a beautiful day in Colorado too, so we're off to a great start. So let's start with the basics here. What exactly is debt settlement?
Well, debt settlement, people are so fearsome of filing a bankruptcy that they'll often do anything to avoid it. And debt settlement is, a process where you hire a company, and what they ostensibly do is deal with your debt. Whether they actually, the teaser is that you'll pay them X number of dollars a month, and from that, they'll, of course, take their fee, and they'll also use money to settle your creditors' claims. They have very good marketing,
I've seen the commercials.
If you're left-handed and you had your ear cut off, we have a special debt settlement program for you. I mean, it's all bullshit, because we have so many people who fall for the ads. I mean, listen, it's great marketing. And after paying a fee for 6 or 7 months or 2 or 3 months, they discover that's the only thing that's occurred. And a bankruptcy, there really isn't any, you file a bankruptcy and 4 months later you get your discharged. There's no questions about it. If it's a typical consumer Chapter 7, you're not at the mercy of some, company who's going to ostensibly work with your creditors to settle things. I've been doing debtors work it'll be 44 years in December. And, back when I started and I had a lot more hair, as you can tell, people never wanted to file a bankruptcy. Everybody was like, can we do something else? And I used to have a form letter that I sent out that said, hey, they'd rather pay you 10 cents on the dollar than pay my fee for a bankruptcy. And by the way, that's 10 cents more than you're going to get if they file a bankruptcy. The general response was, no, we'll like 50 cents percent, 60%. It's a waste of time. I mean, I had this week a woman come in here. Everything was going copacetically with her debt settlement until American Express, who was our biggest creditor at $14,000, said, we're not interested, and we filed a lawsuit. So do what you want with debt settlement. We don't care. So now she came here and she's going to be filing a bankruptcy because the bankruptcy gets rid of it without her case is an assetless case. Why pay them anything if you don't have to? You have to put food on the table. What's more important? Bank of America or American Express being paid in dribs and drabs, or you being able to feed the kids and put gas in the car? Don't get me started on it.
I know, right? I can tell. Well, I also remember the commercials. I've seen the commercials since I was a kid. And a lot of times they talk about debt consolidation, and it certainly sounds very appealing in the word consolidation.
The shtick with debt consolidation is a different angle. Well, you're paying American Express $600 a month. You're paying this one $400 a month. Why not pay them all and have one low monthly payment of $250 a month? And the thing is, one, why would you, again, I look at everything in context of a person filing bankruptcy. Why would you take out a loan to pay off debt that you can't pay off, that you could probably discharge in a bankruptcy? It's like going to a car dealer and, they tell you when the car dealer asks you, how much do you want to pay? It's a mistake to answer. So yeah, I'll pay my $80,000 in debt if I can pay them at $250 a month, so my grandchildren pay it off. It's mishigas. I mean, and that's the difference. And very often the debt consolidation companies, and I can only really speak to Massachusetts and how the homestead exists here. How they do their debt consolidation is they take a loan out on your house and put a mortgage on your house. And you use the proceeds of that mortgage to pay off your creditors. And instead of having unsecured debt that you could discharge in a bankruptcy, now you have a second mortgage on your house that needs to be paid. And why would you exchange, debt that you can make go away to have something that you have to live with? Mortgages, the only way a mortgage goes away is if you pay it off. Granted, like in Massachusetts, if a mortgage hasn't been paid for 35 years, it's too old and it can go away under title standards. But generally, if you don't pay the mortgage, you can transfer the house 1,000 times. It's still there.
Mhm.
So, in debt consolidation, it's a different angle, but I think it's a poor choice because, it doesn't fix your credit. It doesn't get rid of your credit. You just have a new creditor. And very often with the debt consolidation comes new debt on top of that. So what have you accomplished?
How are they allowed to do that, these companies? Like, it seems like it's so shady. I don't know.
Well, no, they're pretty much upfront. I
Okay.
mean, it's why do people buy timeshares? Sounds like a good deal. It's the same sort of thing. I mean, people are having a difficult time, and they feel that, okay, I have this company that's working aggressively for me to make my debts go away. And let's go back to the debt settlement. So let's say you have $50,000 worth of debt, and they do manage to settle 10 grand of it. Well, what has that accomplished for you? You paid money to settle 20% of your debt. Maybe it was short dollars, but you still have 40 grand, and you could have made it all go away in most cases by filing a bankruptcy. And I don't know if I date myself. What was that song? To fear the reaper? There's no real reason.
The reaper.
There's no reason to fear the Chapter 7 trustee. I can tell you today, I filed a case for a young lady. Her husband has a congenital disease. He can't really work. And she came in. It's an assetless Chapter 7. And she came in. She had a freaking manifesto she was going to read. And it was like, what you spent? She said she couldn't sleep. She spent all night drafting this. And it was about this and about that. And the trustee who, as I told her and her father who was sitting here, we used to play basketball together a long time ago. I know for over 40 years. Didn't even ask her why she filed a bankruptcy. It was an assetless case. And she said, that's all it was? I said, yeah, that's all it was. You worried for nothing. But again, with the, getting back to debt settlement, I mean, what have they done for you? Maybe if you have $5,000 worth of debt and they can settle half of it, okay, not bad. I'll worry about the other half. But, if you have a significant amount of debt and significant it can depend on the person, significant can be $10,000, significant can be $100,000.
Sure. Yeah.
But, why would you, if there's an alternative, why would you pay them anything? It doesn't make your credit score any better. It already looks like shit. At least the bankruptcy cleans it out.
Well, I think is there some level of defeat in people with that word bankruptcy, you think?
I may have said on one of these, I'm an inveterate cynic, but I've had people come to me and, they can't believe they're doing this. And after all their work and all that. And
yeah, worked so hard. Never thought it'd happen to me.
And I say to them, listen, thank God it's not your health. That's something that there's nothing you can do about that. And you can't blame yourself. I mean, most of these people, I try to get them to look at it as you got to put food on the table and gas in the car as opposed to paying 26% to some credit card company. And it takes them a while to realize that. It's tough. I've had people tell me they spent 10 years paying off a creditor. They could have gone bankrupt and not, but they feel better. But again, nobody gives them a gold star. It's not like your credit card companies send you a thank you note for paying your credit card bill on time or paying it off.
Well, people are also afraid of the old 7-year thing, right? I mean, that's what everybody, there's a lot of negative connotations to bankruptcy, obviously.
Well, the thing is, yes, it shows up on your credit report for, I think it's 10 years.
10 years, okay.
But what? First off, most of the people it's been a long time already, who file bankruptcy nowadays, or people who, I just spoke to a woman who had $300,000 in medical bills. Her husband was in some crazy accident, and what could you do about that? It's not like she took trips to Europe and went on cruises or something like that.
Yeah,
and that's the typical debtor. Somebody loses a job, medical expenses. You don't find the profligate spenders out there.
Right.
very rare. I don't, to me, it's a business decision you have to make. You're going to be able to live your daily life, or you're worried about keeping your creditors happy. I mean, they'll survive.
They're not going under.
Yeah. Then we're in real trouble.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Individual bankruptcy just would pale in comparison if they all started going bankrupt.
That's true. That is very, by a long shot. Yeah. What are some of the other risks involved in debt settlement and debt consolidation that consumers should be aware of?
Well, the thing is, when you file a bankruptcy, you get a discharge, and you discharge your debts by operation of law. When you deal with debt settlement, because debt consolidation isn't really the same, debt settlement, when you settle a claim, let's say you owe American Express $10,000, and they settle a claim for $3,000, they will send you a 1099 forgiveness of debt, which, as CPAs refer to, can result in a taxable event. And you don't wind up, in a bankruptcy, you don't suffer through that. And I can speak from personal experience. When my wife and I owned our house, we had a second mortgage to Citibank. And we used the second mortgage to, fixed up the kitchen and all this other stuff.
Sure.
And we were paying it and this, that. And suddenly I get a letter from Citibank that they are going to discharge the mortgage, and they're going to forgive the balance of the mortgage was about $90,000. They're going to forgive the $90,000 that's owed on the mortgage. I was pleased.
I would say so.
And so that was wonderful, except they sent me a 1099 forgiveness of debt. And, $90,000 is a pretty significant forgiveness of debt. Fortunately, the feds have, at the time, had a statute that exempts that. So I didn't have to pay any taxes on it. But in Massachusetts, it cost me $8,000, the forgiveness of debt.
Why did they do that?
I have no idea. It was very interesting because I had represented a number of clients who also had Citibank mortgages. Some they were discharging and forgiving, and some they weren't, which I couldn't understand. I mean, I don't know, but, I never win anything. As I always say, if my ship came in, I'd be at the airport. So I did all right on that one.
Yeah, I'd say
with
so.
money, I had to pay the Commonwealth.
So how does the process work of debt settlement? If someone how does it start and what are the steps?
Well, I mean, I only hear the bad stories, people who are, they're fed up. I mean, I guess what you do, and the other problem with debt settlement is they very often have you agree to have a payment deducted automatically from your bank account. And as people I've discovered myself, it's very easy to set that up. It's sometimes next to impossible to stop it. So what happens is when they realize that the debt settlement it's not working out. I don't need to go into the other horror stories, and I tell them, well, what you have to do is stop making those automatic payments. Very often, if their bank, because lots of times the debt settlement companies won't be cooperative. If your bank won't agree to do it, sometimes they have to actually open up a new bank account and start doing their banking elsewhere and just let them keep hitting their old account, for overdrafts, because it won't stop. But that's another thing you get into. I mean, if you can set it up, I guess that you can make a voluntary payment, but they don't like that because then they don't get paid their monthly fees. But, how they set it up is it's so much be like filing a bankruptcy. I don't know necessarily whether they take income and expenses into effect or assets. I think they just work the creditors. They get your liabilities and work them. How they do that, I mean, like I said, I have often had creditor clients, debtors ask me to try to work things out with their creditors. It's a waste of time. And the thing is, very often people will continue to pay their creditors. And if you're hoping to settle for short dollars, you have to prime them. If you're making current payments, what incentive do they have for cutting a deal with you?
That's true. That's a good point.
If you're 6 months in arrears and they've been calling you and you've been ignoring them, it's a different story. You may even get a letter that says, we're willing to do something. I once, and I tell a lot of stories. I once had a client who had a summer house and he wanted to renegotiate the second mortgage on the summer house. He was in a bankruptcy. And when I called him, there was nobody for me to speak to because he was current with the mortgage. I said, Schmuck, why were you having me call you? What was their incentive? I mean, you're current with the payments. You want to make less? I mean,
yeah, like that's true. Like, yeah, hey, would you mind making less money than I've been giving you?
well, it's sort of the reverse of that. People who owe money to credit card companies, they'll offer, agree to listen to you asking for a lower payment. And they'll then very often reject the lower payment, saying that you don't have the income to do it. But wait a minute, I've been able to pay the higher payment every month. Wouldn't you think it follows that I can make the lower payment?
Stands to reason.
Dealing with a bank.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens when people call you? When they come to you and they're like, all right, I've tried this debt consolidation thing. It's a disaster. Help me, Barry. What can I do?
Well, basically I explain to them the bankruptcy process, and, it is not the end of the world. They don't do a rectal exam like you get picked up by a flying saucer or something like that. Okay. I say people
I'm taking notes. Okay. No rectal exam.
Yeah, right. No. Some people like it, but it's not something that's a highlight.
You're like, not my area of expertise.
No. But the 341 meeting with the trustees, I mean, in assetless cases, they get paid $65. How much time are they going to spend? I mean, the young lady, and I sound like my father now, the young lady with the manifesto she was going to read, the wait for her case to be heard was longer than the 341 meeting. And a lot of it was spent me kibitzing with the trustee and her father, who happened to know the trustee, talking about old times. And he's going to declare it an assetless case by 5 o'clock probably today. And she'll get her discharge sometime in January. And there's no cocking around with making payments to anybody. And, she has a very nice house in a very nice suburb that she and her husband are going to keep. She drives 2 nice cars that they're going to keep, as long as you keep making the payments, of course. And, most people don't miss a beat. They say to me, we should have listened to you. Because I always tell them the anxiety of the creditors meeting is a hell of a lot worse than the reality.
Yeah.
And what we do is when they come here and they're done with the debt settlement, we start them on the way to, getting their bankruptcy filing. They meet with me. I tell them, what the situation, what they're going to be looking at, sort of like I've explained here. And then if they're ready to go, we convince them and tell them to stop those involuntary payments, rather have to make the payments to me on my fee. And then they meet with my assistant, Kathy, who does all the input to create their schedules and statements of affairs. And we file their case. And, the one thing that's certain is 4 months later, they're going to discharge all the dischargeable debts. If they owe money to the IRS or, the local taxing authorities, under certain circumstances, you can discharge that too, but that could be non-dischargeable. Student loans, as most people know, are non-dischargeable, though I will say that the federal government has had a change in how they deal with them. I used to tell people who wanted to discharge student loans that you had to walk in front of a bus. Your estate doesn't have to worry about it. But now they look at the borrower's good faith, the number of years they've had the loans, whether they've made payments or not, and whether they've looked to the various programs like income-based payments that they have. And, I just filed my first complaint in their new basis, and she's a young lady too. Her student loans were discharged. She had about $45,000 worth. And I thought that was, I'm impressed. And
yeah,
I don't get impressed that often. It shows that I guess if you've been ignoring the student loan people, ignore you if you want a modification, been at least attempting, and making an effort, they will give it some consideration. So
yeah. That's interesting. All right. Well, thank you for joining us on Bankruptcy Through the Looking Glass with experienced attorney Barry Levine. To get in touch with Barry, you can visit levineslaw.com. And of course, please like and subscribe to the channel. We love having you here. Barry, great to see you. I look forward to the next one.
Me too. Have a good one.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.